Welcome to the Scrum.org Community Podcast, the podcast from the home of Scrum. In this podcast, Agile experts, including professional Scrum trainers and other industry thought leaders, share their stories and experiences. We also explore hot topics in our space with thought-provoking, challenging, energetic discussions. We hope you enjoy this episode.
Hello and welcome to the Scrum.org Community Podcast. I'm your host, Dave West, CEO here at Scrum.org. In today's podcast, we're talking about an annual event, Give Thanks for Scrum, that runs in the Boston area. This event's run by Agile Boston and has been running for 17 years. That's 17. It seems an inordinate amount of time. The reason why I wanted to talk about this event is that over those 17 years, as I've been part of it for the last sort of 10, it's really acted as an incredible mirror on the Agile and Scrum market, in a market that's been doing Scrum for probably 25, 30 years. So I thought it would be really interesting to get the creator of Give Thanks for Scrum, Daniel Mezek, to come and join me today and talk about Give Thanks for Scrum and some of the learnings and some of those experiences for us, so that you, our listeners, can really sort of use that as a mirror to see how Scrum and Agile has changed. Welcome to the podcast, Daniel.
Thank you, sir. Glad to be here. Glad to be your honored guest.
Well, thank you. You always my honored guest for whatever situation. So, Daniel, you're the founder and one of the people on the leadership team of Agile Boston, and you've been doing this event when you were a lot younger, 17 for the last 17 years. I think our listeners would love to hear a little bit about how it was incepted, what happened, why it happened.
Well, around 2006, I got interested in Scrum, and one thing led to another. We formed a user group in Boston, and I invited Jeff Sutherland to come and talk at the first meeting. We got over 200 people at that meeting. It was quite, I mean, Jeff drew a lot of people. And then when Jeff was, when he did his thing, we got talking. I got to know him, and I asked him if maybe, he could invite Ken to come and do the same thing. And Ken did the same thing and got a similar crowd a few months later. So that was the advent of Agile Boston. And then it was striking to me that this thing that appeared to be growing quickly and making an impact in the world, a positive impact, was born in Boston. And these two gentlemen, formulated this framework. And here we are in Boston. What are we doing about it? So I started to try to get both of them in the same room, at a user group meeting or an event where they could both be present, and maybe we'd get 400 people. And I could not accomplish that. Jeff at that time was spending his summers mostly in Scandinavia doing Scrum stuff. Ken was all over the world like Jeff, and you just could never get them in the same room. So I kept thinking about it and thinking about it and thinking about it. And one morning I realized these guys have families. They live in the Boston area. There's a family holiday that's on the calendar in November, the American Thanksgiving. I bet you we could do something in that week and get them both in the same room. And I called Jeff. And I asked him if he was interested in doing it and, getting in front of the folks on Thanksgiving week. And he said, okay. And then once that was established, I used the same pattern I used previously. And I asked him if he might want to, you think it'd be a good idea to ask Ken if he might want to join us. He's like, oh, totally. Yeah, I could tell him, yeah, I want him to come. Go invite him, So I did. And I said, hey, Jeff. Jeff said yes. You want to come do this thing? And Ken's like, absolutely. So that's how Give Thanks for Scrum was born. It's because they're in the same place at the same time during that week in November. That's the reason for the name and everything else about it.
That's the anchor of family is always a good one. And by the way, knowing them both very very well and their wives very well, they weren't so their wives were not so happy with them being. They avoided shopping and other things that week, but that might be another motivation for them as well. So
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about this event from that original 17 years ago to now. There's been a lot of themes, a lot of different themes during those 17 years. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So what we try to do with each event is offer a glimpse, maybe not too far into the future, but a little bit into the future. With Jeff and Ken present, we've got the two subject matter experts in a place where we can find that out, and we would always invite other related speakers to come and round out the card of speakers. Each year, Scrum had a different kind of a flavor. Way back in the day, it was one thing, and now it's quite another as people have used it and it's matured. So like back in as late as first of all, the period from 2007 to 2017, about 10 years, I would say that was primarily an education and experience report kind of event. People would come, they would learn new things, they would meet new people, and they'd hear experiences of people who tried to do this in organizations and were successful. And we brought different thought leaders to the event. And these speakers would fly in and they would do it for nothing. So that's what happened. And we were at the Microsoft facility in Waltham for many years, and then they moved to a different place. But for the first 10 years, we were there, and we don't have a lot of the theme information. But around 2017, we started focusing on Scrum and agility and empiricism in general, at scale. That was the 2017 theme. Mm. So some of the other themes over the years, 2018, business agility. There was a conference in 2009. There was a local regional Scrum gathering that was in Arizona in, I think it was 2010. And it was called Scrum Beyond Software. And that was a very early event that was discussing what we now call business agility. So around 2018, that was our theme, business agility, how Scrum can be used beyond engineering, right? And then 2019, success with Scrum, emphasizing the spirit of Scrum and the best ideas and patterns for achieving real success. Following year, the spirit of Scrum, which was literally focusing on the foundational culture and mindset of Scrum, especially as that was the year that the event went global, right? Because of COVID 2020. And I think we had 300 people attend online that year. And then in the 20s, value delivery. There was 2021 was a focus on value delivery. 2022 was a focus on discipline, the need for rigor and proper execution. Structure. 2023 was empiricism in the modern world, like Scrum as an instance of an empirical framework, but empiricism being the actual goal and star of the show in terms of process. And then the last 2 years, 2024, it ended with a question mark. The future of Scrum, where we explored, where is Scrum going? Because there were some twists and turns in the marketplace for Scrum in 2023, 2024. And then finally in 2025, Scrum renewed what Scrum was always meant to be. And the subtext was about navigating an uncertain transition of what we might call legacy agility, incorporating AI into Scrum practice and the necessary evolution of the Scrum Master role. So that's where we went over the past 10 or so years.
So before we talk about 2025, because I really do want to spend quite a lot of time talking about that, I'd love to talk about how we got there, that it very much actually for 10 years, you were very much focused on experience report, teaching existing Scrum. I'm always shocked by how long these things take, but that's not shouldn't come as a surprise. I still see a lot of people that are like, oh, that's why you do a daily. Didn't realize. I still see that. Then
Yes.
scaling, and then value. Well, business agility, scaling, those things. So how can we take these ideas and make them bigger? And then the value, how does Scrum deliver more value, and the value of Scrum? Those two interesting points. Isn't it? It's kind of, I don't know. When I looked at the list, because I obviously used AI to generate the list of what was the focus of Give Thanks for Scrum, and it was using what little information is out there, because 17 years ago, it was a very different world, right? What was interesting was you could have literally taken any agile event and what was being talked about in the community, and this was like a summary of it, which I thought was absolutely so interesting, that this event was almost a sort of summary of what was happening in the world at that moment.
Yes, each year around June, we get ready, for structuring the event, and we have discussions that are wide ranging about what the theme should be, about what is the state of practice, what the quality of it, the volume of it, what changes are taking place, what are some of the cross currents in the community right now, and all this kind of stuff, and most importantly, how can we serve the public with an event that really focuses on something that they care about and can benefit from, right? Like, how can we deliver the goods, at the event? That's what the theme construction is about. So we're always trying to make a theme that's timely, urgent, valuable, and interesting, right? So we spend a lot of time debating that. What are the candidate themes, and what's the one we're gonna settle on?
Yeah. What struck me is it was almost a barometer to the state of agility and Scrum adoption. And each year, when I was reading it, it just made me smile, because I was sort of remembering back to the heated, LinkedIn, and prior to LinkedIn, the heated in-person debates that you would have, or Twitter debates.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought that was interesting. So let's turn a little bit to 2025, because I know our listeners they may not live in the Boston area, and unfortunately, they couldn't get to the 2025 event. So tell me a little bit about the event. Obviously, I was there. I did some sort of presentation. I apologize, everybody. Well, next time I'll try to do better. But tell us a little bit about this year's event, or last year's event.
Yeah, so the 2025 event, like all of the events over the 17-year period that we've done this, we're trying to serve the public so they say wow, right? So they come and they really get a lot of value for their time and money that they spent to come to the event. So what we did this year, in prior years, from 2020 up to the present day, we were online. We're doing online events.
Yeah.
And this year we decided, okay, let's go back and do the live event. So what we did was, in the morning, we had 3 stations in the conference space that addressed 3 separate topics, and the people rotated through those. And here's the 3 topics. The first one was a new focus on tangible results above everything else. Yeah. In other words, no more hand waving, no more theory and teaching. We need to deliver something here. So how do we deliver tangible results, right? And this speaks to the value question. The second topic was incorporating AI into Scrum practice in practical terms. And this is both how the client's implementation of it in their business, and then the practitioners' incorporation of AI into Scrum practice, right? So that was what that was about. And then the third one was the necessary evolution of the Scrum Master role. That's a very broad topic. If we look at the Scrum Master role, I mean, ideally, great managers are exhibiting all the properties of a great Scrum Master, right? Those are two separate things. The manager role is a formally authorized role. The Scrum Master thing is something we lay on top of that. Because we had that conversation about how do we demonstrate the value of the Scrum Master, basically.
So let's just start on that one, because these are three. It's funny that for the last 17 years, that value conversation, I'm sure, has been happening continuously. We'll come back to that in a second. But let's start with the Scrum Master role, because, you know, we can't be oblivious to the fact that Scrum Masters are being laid off. There's a lot of sort of like anti-Scrum Master in the industry as a whole. Capital One is obviously famous. They got rid of all their Scrum Masters. We've got organizations that actually came to the event that have renamed them Agile Delivery Leads. I think Progress Software has done that. You know, that role, that section of the event is a really interesting one, because, you know, there's a lot of people that are very concerned as to their future because of the job title Scrum Master, not necessarily because of the accountability. Because let's be frank, Daniel, if you're running a team, if you've got multiple teams working or a team working, you're going to have somebody. The best teams have somebody that's looking at the machine of delivery and helping that machine deliver. It might be a manager, it might be a project manager, it might be, I don't know who, but somebody's doing that. So the accountability, if you're going to be successful, has to happen. The thing that I noticed from the event was that a lot about job titles, which was kind of both disappointing and also to be expected, right?
Yeah. I want to make a comment here about one of the skills the Scrum Master has to have. The Scrum Master has to understand executive psychology and be able to function as a good communicator to these authority figures.
Yeah.
And this is something that we really kind of left Scrum Masters out, kind of hang out to dry on this and figure it out for themselves. And it's not that simple. There's some very subtle signaling that executives are very sensitive to, that Scrum Masters also need to be aware of if they're going to be effective in their job. So there's a lot of that. And I've been doing coaching since, basically 2006. And I can tell you that people in formally authorized roles like managers, some of them exhibit profoundly refined and well-developed Scrum Master skills. So this underlap and this overlap about the Scrum Master role is something that's the worldwide community hasn't done a really good job of addressing.
No, and the whole agile coach thing sort of just added a level of confusion to the industry. It's funny, when you talk to Jeff and Ken about this, they're very clear. You've got somebody that makes sure that the system's working, and somebody that's always trying to improve the system and challenge the system and protects the system. And when they say system, they mean the people, the practices, the technology even that's being used to deliver valuable product. And that's what they think of themselves as. Certainly Ken, who's probably more of a Scrum Master than Jeff, and I think it'd be fair to say Jeff's more of a product-y kind of owner type person. But Ken, who definitely exhibits that, is like, well, are you a manager? in some situations, yeah, if that's how you get the authority to protect, if that's how you get the authority to make changes, to fire people, to bring new people in, to do that, then that's necessary. In other situations, that is not the case.
Yes. So the Scrum Master role is a very interesting role. You've used the A word a couple times, or you're talking about authority and authorization, and we could go off on a whole other 1-hour podcast just about that. But that was one of the three things in the 2025 Give Thanks for Scrum, the necessary evolution of the Scrum Master role.
And from what I remember from the sessions and the sort of present back, it was very much, one, this is a key role, a key set of skills that every organization is going to need. Two, they need to manage their executives in a way that shows value. So it sort of fits in with the first thing that we talked about.
Yes.
And they are going to be a key catalyst for the adoption of AI in their teams as the product owner is thinking about AI as it applies to the product that they're doing. I think they were the three big things that jumped out. Did I miss anything on that?
No, but I really, when I was just listening to you there, I realized that, and I agree and join with you in this idea. Someone in the organization close to the teams needs to be demonstrating those behaviors. Yeah. Otherwise, things do break down. The communication breaks down. The flow of process and value breaks down without someone who's stewarding, I guess would be a good term. And making sure when there's a hiccup or something that it's addressed and dealt with, and the flow continues.
Exactly. And the job title thing was interesting because in the room we had people who thought very strongly that it needed to be a separate job title with management authority. We had other people in the room that were very passionate that it wasn't a job title and it was just a set of behaviors, accountabilities, whatever you want to call it, that anybody could do, and there was much debate as to which was the most successful. And unfortunately, I think it depends on the environment in which you're putting this person in.
It does.
So then that brings me to the second area, which is the AI stuff. And this was obviously a massive theme of what Jeff was talking about, and a bit of the theme that I was talking about as well in my talks, which is the role of agentic AI, or I think a better way of describing it is really this idea that you've got a member of the team or members of the team, the Scrum team, that aren't human, that are actually AI tools that have a nice user interface by common language, by standard English language.
Yeah. Let's discuss that for a minute. Okay, so the group relations people, Eric Trist and some of these other people from earlier history of organizational development, coined the phrase socio-technical system, socio-technical design, to describe the man-machine interface, right? So when a person is operating, it's one thing. When a machine is operating, it's another thing. But when the machine and the human interact, it's a third thing.
Yeah.
And they're called socio-technical design is really critical. So if you think of, like, for example, email has really bad socio-technical design. Any Yahoo can push any kind of junk into your inbox if they have your email address.
Yes.
So that's bad technical design. At the other end, you've got this a generative AI that has an interface that's a natural language interface. It has profoundly great socio-technical design. Okay, and we're led to believe, because we jump to conclusions as humans that it's like a team member, right? No, it's not a team member. It's still a machine. It's still a tool, and the people are over here, and the tools are over here. It just so happens the tools are acting more and more like, language terms, more human. Yeah. Right. So I think it's a little bit of a category error. When I was at the event this year, I was thinking they're not team members. Jeff was saying the AI is a team member. No, I don't think so.
I mean, it depends on how you're thinking about your team. I certainly wouldn't like to go out for a drink with AI because they don't have a wallet and they can't buy a round. So, and that's obviously how I define a good team member. But that's just because I'm British. It's kind of what we do. But the in terms of, and I think Jeff was really categorizing it on, they can take tasks from the backlog, sprint backlog,
Yeah,
and do them. And it's
yeah,
as simple as that. In fact, I was on a call this morning with a guy, ex-McKinsey guy, who now runs the development of this Swedish company. He's got about 120, 150 engineers working, and he's basically ripping out massive chunks of their system and replacing it with generative AI capabilities. And he's increasing the capability. He's reducing size of teams, and because it can do some amazing things. And he's like, well, it can build code faster than most developers. It can do testing definitely better than most developers. It can help me make decisions about architecture, about, etc. But it obviously can't. What it doesn't replace is the decisions and the choices and the empathy with their users and things like that. But what it can do is it can augment your team in
right.
such a way that you can either deliver more stuff or there can be less of you to deliver it, which most organizations, unfortunately, are doing the latter, which is a bit of a shame.
Yes. Let's discuss this agentic AI just for a minute, right?
Mm.
So I think Jeff is quite correct in what he said during the 2025 event, which is companies that reorganize their workflows to acknowledge the advent of the agents,
Yeah.
AI agents, are the ones that are going to massively benefit at the expense of their competitors who, for whatever reason, cannot or will not
Yes.
re-architect their workflow.
Yep. Yes. I think that was the crux of his presentation. And the call to action was, and you as Scrum practitioners need to be at the front of working out what these workflows look like. And these workflows are going to change. That was the other interesting theme from his presentation, and in general, was these workflows will change on a at least a monthly basis, probably quicker than that, as these models change. Obviously, potentially with the advent of the use of quantum computing, and assuming that energy is free and available ever, if we can, that potentially these LLMs, the models that they're running, will be dynamic. Thus, they will change continuously. Thus, your workflows can potentially change frequently.
And people are allergic to that.
Mm.
So, we haven't discussed empiricism yet, but I want to bookmark it because you might want to go to the first of the three things, which is a new focus on tangible results. We might want to talk about that for a minute before we get to empiricism. But most people are allergic to not knowing, and they will literally make up a story that may or may not be true to comfort themselves about what's going on, right? So we're all making up stories to make sense of reality, and to not make sense of reality, that is to have uncertainty, is very stressful to people.
Yeah.
Which explains a lot of, resistance to frameworks like Scrum, right?
Yeah, I think that the Scrumming encourages three really important changes in an organization, maybe four, but three for sure. One is around ownership. What do you mean there's somebody's actually in charge, makes a decision about what's being done, etc.?
Yes.
Because people hate that.
Yes.
It approaches problems with a, we're not totally sure, let's do the smallest we can do to get the most value. You're like, hang on a minute, of course we're sure. If we deliver this feature, we know that this will do X. And the third thing is, it says the only people that actually know how to solve these problems are the people that are working in these problems, Hang
Yes.
on a minute. What do you mean? No. I know what needs to be done. I just haven't got time to do it, so that I've employed these people. So
Yes.
those three things ultimately are counter to most organizations.
Yes, because organizations are happiest and have the most sense of well-being when there's certainty. So we see
Yeah.
this in the stock market, right? Like, this is why we have earnings calls, right? To manage the expectations of people, so they know what to expect, right? And this is what corporations run on. Meanwhile, like the entire world, I could strongly argue that the world has become more uncertain and more empirical than ever.
Well, that need to be more empirical.
Yeah, we need to be.
The level
Empiricism
of
is more important than ever because of the pace of uncertainty and change.
Yeah, and ultimately, you could argue it's almost chaotic now, the world, because just because something worked a minute ago doesn't mean it's going to work. Obviously, empiricism gives us, I'm no expert on complexity theory, Snowden and the like, but it gives us at least some level of control and some level of feeling like we're making progress towards a goal, etc.
Yes, yes, and in Ken's 1996 book, I think it was called Agile Software Development with Scrum.
Yeah, with Scrum, with the colors on the front. Yeah.
Yeah, that book has a lot of complexity science in it that's obviously, influenced by Ken. So Ken was always thinking in this way. He co-wrote that with Mike Beadle.
Yeah.
But when I reread that book, I was shocked at the quality of the content in that book around Scrum's addressing complexity and uncertainty.
And that was actually all motivated because his brother-in-law, actually, but we'll ignore the Hugh, who was working at DuPont, was working in materials and where there was a large amount of science that highlighted the lack of certainty. And they were building processes with uncertain outcomes. So the outcomes weren't necessarily uncertain, but how you got there was relatively uncertain. And and when they were talking about how software was developed, he said, "What the heck? Why are you applying this structured?" He didn't call it waterfall, sequential control process. You need to apply a different one. And obviously, Ken's wife, Chris, is a PhD in chemistry as well. So I think that all came to a head. And hence the reason why empiricism was very explicitly added to Scrum.
Yes, it's super interesting. The whole thing about Scrum in its role in a world that needs more empiricism is like just incredible. So like if you go around and you look at like online, people talking about, well, that's not Scrum, this isn't Scrum, or Scrum is nothing but a collection of empirical practices that existed before, blah 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 blah. Yeah, all those things are true, but if you don't do them, if you don't do the behaviors that Scrum's suggesting, like having a single owner, like having a daily, replan, these kinds of things, you're going to get into huge trouble. And I would argue that this ABC waterfall approach is actually just a comforting story that's completely an illusion. Because if we were to acknowledge that, we'd have to face the fact we don't know anything.
Yes. Well, actually, Winston Royce, who was the guy I used to work with, his son Walker, Winston Royce, who coined in the IBM Systems Journal, coined the term waterfall, described it as a way that people like to manage software projects, but that isn't the reality. And but that phrase was like, oh, that's a nice phrase. We'll call it waterfall.
Yes.
And I think that what's interesting, and let's talk briefly about that first subject, value, because I think it does have a clear connection with all the other things that we've just talked about, the role of the Scrum Master and the use of AI in Scrum teams, and the connection with empiricism, because ultimately the value of Scrum is the ability to effectively manage a complex situation and deliver some value, the most value that you can out of it, whilst not killing your team or destroying your team.
Right.
That is ultimately the value of Scrum, but it seems that many organizations have a really hard time with that because it is counter to their existing organizational structure, processes, truisms, and you've got this like, well, what is the value? What is it? I mean, business outcomes. Okay, well, what happens if I do experiments that demonstrate that actually this isn't the business? So it's learning. How do you measure learning? And now you throw AI into it, where you've got
Right.
a continuous process of discovery around how to work utilizing AI.
Right. So ultimately, I've thought a little bit about this. First of all, value is a very deep and wide subject. Like, what is value? There's cash and non-cash value. If the company stock goes up, 300%, can we attribute that directly to Scrum? Probably not. Okay, so what is the ultimate measure of value? What is a proxy for all of the nuance of the value components? I think it is delighted stakeholders. They fund everything. They are voting with the budget that they have, stewardship authority over, and they're looking to get something for that budget. And when they fund a Scrum team, that's what they expect. So to me, if the stakeholders are delighted, with a few exceptions, it's a pretty good proxy for what value actually is.
Yeah. I'd probably agree, actually. Ultimately, and a good product owner working with the Scrum Master will determine the relative importance. Not all stakeholders are the same. For
Right.
instance, I have stakeholders, I have PSTs, 300 and something PSTs. I have my team, and I have Ken and Chris, owners. When it comes to who thinks I'm doing a good job, there's definitely a hierarchy there,
Right.
and as there should be.
Right.
But ultimately, I think, yes, I agree. But the thing that's really interesting about that is, particularly if you bring empiricism into it, the only way they can know stuff is if you do stuff.
Right.
But that's actually a jump. Most people's perception of the value of a team that's working for them, with them, delivering stuff to them is not necessarily, other than users, there's very few people that actually, that how they appreciate the value of a team is by them doing stuff. Do you know what I mean, Daniel? It's really, whispers and, oh, have you heard about that team over there? Or, that they're not really doing well, or, oh, did you see their dashboard, or all this stuff. So the most important thing a Scrum Master can do is make what they're doing and the value that it's delivering transparent to all stakeholders in the context necessary for that stakeholder to appreciate it, I think.
Yes, that's super important. And in fact, broadcasting information in a way that does not require a reply is actually a really good way to create a coordinated system. So, for example, if you look in nature, social insects have colonies in the millions,
Mm.
and they are through signaling mechanisms, they stay coordinated. So what you just
Yep.
spoke to there is super important. Okay, if a team's delivering value, it needs to get broadcasted, and so that the other teams can pick up on the same patterns and so forth and so on. But the reality is that uncertainty is something that highly authorized business leaders are allergic to.
Mm.
And the assumption of using an empirical framework like Scrum is that we don't know everything, which is quite frightening to people in control. So, we do have a little bit of a dilemma there. We haven't really done a great job of educating about empirical process control.
No, particularly at scale. I think
Right.
everybody can appreciate it when they're working in their situation at their moment. For instance,
Yes.
the best examples of Scrum being executed, Ken talks about 20 years ago, were disaster projects, whether it's, Patient Keeper, dare I say it, or whether it's FBI Sentinel. And then even the use at companies like Fidelity, the reason why Scrum was being used wasn't because things were going well, it's because they were going really badly. And yeah.
It's because they were desperate.
Yes. And they were willing to accept that they didn't know stuff. And they're willing to accept because there was no alternative.
Yes. So they came kicking and screaming to new understandings about, empiricism, right? Do a little, learn a little, inspect that, deliver, go again, right? This is something that's, there's an allergy developed for that. And I want to say one more thing before we probably move on to some other topics is I think the number one impediment to good empirical process control in organizations, profit-seeking, goal-seeking companies, the number one impediment, in my opinion, is, drum roll please, it is obscene levels of profit. When you're printing money, why do I have to improve? Okay, so if you look at, for example, insurance companies, they are the poster child of this pattern.
Yes.
They print money. There's huge bureaucracy and internal, waste that's generated by that bureaucracy, and they don't care at all. Why?
Yes.
Because they're just printing.
And it's hard to change that in terms of organization. I mean, insurance companies, by the way, I'm not dissing insurance companies. It's a very, very important business. And there's some amazing people working in insurance companies that are booking that trend. They're delivering value in spite of the environment that they're in. But the insurance companies actually have structures around protecting risk and slowing things down. And so by the very nature of their business. So yeah, it is hard to see them changing. Maybe AI will be the catalyst for certain levels of change when your competitor is 7 people and you're 3,000 people.
Right.
And if you look at what Mark Andreessen's doing in terms of him funding startups, he's now funding startups that with you cannot grow your team more than, I don't know, 7 or something. I think he lets them grow their sales organization, but their product delivery has to be less than 10 people, I think. And when you're competing against those kind of organizations with the ability to rapidly change, then these organizations will have to change. But that's always been my assumption. It's not been proven right yet. So
yes.
But so we will see. Anyway, we've been talking, and we could talk for hours, Dan, as we have. And our listeners obviously have probably more important things to do, including delivering value and actually doing real work. So I guess as we wrap this up, you're thinking about 2026, and I encourage all the listeners in the Boston area in particular to please come to this event. I am committed to come, as is Jeff, for this year, 2026, much to my wife's annoyance, who was trying to give me a shopping list the day before. But what are you thinking 2026 is going to be about? Is it going to be more of the same? Is it going to be just all about AI? What do you think?
A couple things. First of all, AI is going to be a predominant thing next year for this event. And the reason why is because we'll have a whole year of learning and applying it. And there'll be a progression just like there was with Scrum itself over time. Over these past 17 years, we're going to see that same kind of thing happen with AI. Yeah. And AI is transformative. And of course, Scrum's all about transformational products and transformational change. So those two things are linked at the hip. So I think we're going to see the AI thing be even clearer, maybe a little more narrowly defined. We'll address it. It won't be as wide. It'll be a little more narrow and a little more focused on particular things that are working that we'll know as the year unfolds. And then the second thing that's big that we're talking about now is the kind of what's the word I'm looking for? The demise of the large agile framework. where it's beginning to be seen as like, we really wanted to believe this stuff worked. And that's why we bought it, and we actually bought, maybe something that didn't work the way we expected, or maybe in some cases didn't work at all. I think that this is something that's going to accelerate and continue into 2026. You're seeing the agile and empirical stuff being rolled into product roles. And, the idea of like release train engineer and all these other roles, they're sort of being subsumed into the formally authorized roles that are on the org chart.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always shocked and scaling's an interesting topic. I'm not sure I've got any more answers than anybody else around it, though I've seen hundreds, if not thousands, of organizations wrestling with it. What was always a shock was things like Scaled Agile and the like. I'm not dissing them, but you didn't really see those. You don't see if it was a dedicated software company, they wouldn't be using something like a Scaled Agile, which is really interesting, as all of these companies that were adopting it were saying we're going to be increasingly, our value and our innovation is increasingly from software. And there was always this sort of disconnect. I had a podcast the other day where an organization had adopted it. Actually, a software organization had adopted SAFe, and they were like saying, we're moving away from that to something slightly different. So I think those two themes will continue. I think I agree with you. I think the application of AI, a lot more practical stuff, and I think the sort of realize, what does the future have for enterprises? Is it just product centric? Is it, particularly if AI changes the way in which IT is consumed in organizations? What does that mean?
Yes.
I think there's going to be an interesting conversation about the place that agile happens. Maybe I think that's going to change over the next 3 to 5 years, which is which of course, because Give Thanks for Scrum is always a little bit of a mirror of what's happening in the world, we will see that in the titles of Give Thanks for Scrum, the themes of Give Thanks for Scrum in the next few years.
Yes. And going forward, we are holding the tension between the online event and the live face-to-face thing that we did in 2025. So in 2020, we did online. It was purely online. Got over 300 people. 2025, we're in Boston. We had about 110 people. We had no online aspect. So what we're doing is we're thinking about how we can blend these two things. And I've received some good ideas from other people about how we might be able to do this, where we do a blended event that has both the face-to-face community, Boston community aspect, but also the wider online piece that because the world is actually interested in what we have to say.
It does appear so. Well, Daniel, thank you for spending the time today talking about Give Thanks for Scrum. I really appreciated it.
Thank you, Dave. It's my pleasure. And, I look forward to seeing what unfolds in 2026 for Scrum and Scrum.org as well.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And thank you for listening. Today, we were talking about Give Thanks for Scrum, which has been running for 17, can you believe it, years. And I was fortunate to have Daniel Mezek, founder of Give Thanks for Scrum and founder of Agile Boston and part of the leadership team of Agile Boston. Daniel definitely shared with me and hopefully with you the story of Give Thanks for Scrum and how it's evolved over these 17 years and left us with 2025, the role of AI, the value, where does value live, and the future of the Scrum Master accountability, and talked a little bit about that, and and how those three sort of entwine in terms of the future of Scrum, which I thought was really, really interesting, and hopefully you did as well. Thanks for listening to today's Scrum.org community podcast. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe, share with your friends, and of course, come back and listen to some more. I'm lucky enough to have a variety of guests talking about everything in the area of professional Scrum, product thinking, and of course, Agile. Thanks, everybody. Scrum on.